everybody. Welcome back to Corrections, and let's get started. I said there were no direct flights from LaGuardia to LAX. There is one. There is one a week. Do you want to guess what airline it is, Shoemaker? Spirit Airlines. It's a true story. Spirit Airlines has a Saturday morning flight from LaGuardia to LAX. There's a rule at LaGuardia that you cannot fly a flight that's more than 1,500 miles outside LaGuardia Airport, but that rule is waived on Saturday. So Spirit Airlines took advantage of it. And, you know, if you're going from New York to LA and you want to see the stars, they're probably not on that flight. Someone from Spirit Airlines actually reached out to tell us that. They didn't reach out directly. They had to connect in Florida. We talked about people taking horse pills, ivermectin, horse pills. We said don't take horse pills to treat COVID. And a lot of people said, look, you know, the prescription ivermectin, is a pill. The horse medicine ivermectin is a paste. So we should have said, we were wrong to say don't eat horse pills. What we should have said is don't eat horse paste. So I guess we're the dummies. In the back, I think, you know, and again, like, don't eat paste in general. If we learned anything in kindergarten that we could take with us the rest of our life, don't eat the paste. We've talked about the knitting community, the foul-mouthed, short-tempered, incredibly diverse knitting community. And as a little Easter egg for them, on the back of my card last week, I wrote knit 1, purl 2, relax 3. I spelled pearl, P-E-A-R-L. So once again, they did what their natural state is outrage. They said it's not, you spelled it wrong, it's P-U-R-L, but that's not what I was doing. I was saying, 1, knitters, listen up. 2, here is a pearl of wisdom, which is 3, relax. Oh, this is bad. I talked about Twiki, the robot. Said he was from Battlestar Galactica. He's from Buck Rogers. And a lot of you said that I did that on purpose. I was, you know, throwing out jackal bait. First of all, I would never do that. I would never do that for this, okay? Because there was a real cost when I did that. I had my nerd card revoked. And that's not just like a thing, that's a real thing you have and you need. Like, my nerd card has come in super handy even recently. I got to get the vaccine early because a nerd card, when you have a nerd card, they just assume you have moderate to severe asthma. And by the way, asthma community, don't come at me thinking I'm making fun of people with asthma. I got it. I still carry an inhaler, okay? You want to come at me about my asthma? You just name the time and the place. Ideally, a place without ragweed or pet dander. You know, it was really Patton Oswalt was the one who called me to say my nerd card was revoked. So they had a friend do it. But I will say this about Twiki. A lot of people are like, you idiot. Twiki was from Buck Rogers. I'm not lying. There were 7 different spellings of Twiki. So you're not better than me. A couple people spelled it Twiggy with 2 G's. Twiggy, of course, was the robot in the short-lived sitcom Laverne and Shirley in Space. Twiggy and Lenbot and Twiggy were the robots they would they would show up at the funniest time. Laverne and Shirley, they'd be on the space station. And Shirley would be like, I don't know about space, Laverne. Just there's the creepiest creatures here. Hello. Also, I'll apologize for getting wrong. The Twiki was from Buck Rogers and not Battlestar. But you know who else should apologize? How about Buck Rogers for thinking in the 25th century this is what robots would look like? And we're barely into the 21st century, and like Boston Dynamics has robots doing like parkour. And they were like, oh, the 25th century, they'll have like metal bowl cuts. That's you know what the actor is? Gil Faizon. Charmed, I'm sure. We've been talking about the New York Times spelling bee. This is not a correction, but it was really sweet. The people over at the New York Times, the Word Games people, sent me a spelling bee mug, which I thought was very nice, and a card, which surprised me because I just thought they'd have better handwriting. I don't know. I mean, I was like foolish to assume that people like good at word games would have good penmanship, but that's a shame on me. I finished the last corrections by saying, see you in September. I was told by a bunch of people, I don't see you, you see me. We had a graphic of an F train in a flooded 59th Street subway station. The F train does not stop at 59th Street. I said one or two things last night when I meant to say one of two things. We talked about being taught fractals in high school. A lot of people said you don't get taught fractals in high school. I also said it would have been great if AOC could have taught me math in high school. And a bunch of people, which I think was very cruel, said she wasn't even born when I was in high school. But she was. When I was a sophomore, she was born. A lot of, I guess it's an old wives' tale. You can go swimming right after you eat. You don't have to wait 30 minutes, so just have a big old meal and get right in the pool. This was a little hurtful. Someone said, I guess, and again, not everybody has to like corrections. It's not for everyone. Someone said, this was a comment they left. How do I opt out of these? So, there's the cursor. Just move. If you move it, there's there's two lines like this. And then if you click, it's if you click it, it's like the universal symbol for pause. You just hit it and it stops, and then you just go about it, doing something else. The film is called The Goonies, not Goonies. Also, it turns out a lot of movies were shot in Astoria, Oregon, where The Goonies was shot. Short Circuit, Kindergarten Cop, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, Ring 2. Not bad. My question to those of you in Astoria, do you have film tourism? Do people who like those films come to look around, At the Astoria Airport, which is in Warrenton, shame on you, can you buy It's Not a Tumor shirt? Or a Number 5 is Alive coffee mug? It's just a question, that's not a correction. Talked about, speaking of the Goonies, the importance to remember when you're doing impressions, don't do Sloth. Sloth was a character in the Goonies, and just don't do Sloth. And it's a lot of comedians who had like big sloth chunks in their act complain now. So they're like, I can't do Sloth. And a lot of them, like, that's their act now. It's like, you can't do sloth anymore. But then a lot of them still do sloth. I'm like, which is it? You know? Can't have your Baby Ruth and eat it too. Anyway, I talked about how don't do sloth is the motto of Impression Camp, but it's in Latin. I couldn't remember the exact Latin of the seal at Impression Camp, but I wanted to get it right. So I went to one of our producers, Emily, because we actually use a translation service whenever we do something in a foreign language. And I said, can you find out, using the translation service, how you would say don't do sloth in Latin? And she came back to me and she showed me the email from the translation service. And they said, as you likely know, seemed a little passive aggressive right off the bat. As you likely know, Latin is a dead language. So we're not going to be able to get you an answer today. And you know, because they said they usually go to, you know, what two professions do you think they go to, Shoemaker, to get Latin?
Medical?
Doctors, correct?
Legal.
Priests. And I get, you don't want to, like, they also said they're notoriously hard to get in touch with, doctors and priests. And you wouldn't want to interrupt a surgery to find out how to say don't do sloth. Doctor, stop what you're doing. It's for Late Night with Seth Meyers. No, not broadcast. Anyway, so we couldn't get it from the translation service, and so I had to go to Google Translate. And guys, look, when you go to Google Translate, you've already lost. It's already too late. You're not going to get what you need. Going to Google, it's like if you want a picture taken of you and your friends, and the only person you can find is a very old woman. She'll take the picture, but you're never going to look at it. So I use Google Translate and for don't do sloth. And here's what someone told me it translated to, because, you know, of course, the jackals all speak Latin. Do not make of the wild meat for the peril. Do not make of the wild meat for the paralysis. Don't do sloth. A lot of you have also noted that when I first mentioned Impression Camp on the show, I said it was a place I went where they would stop getting me to do impressions, but I've since reframed it as a place where they've helped me hone my impressions. So what happened was this. I did originally go so that I could stop doing impressions, but then they heard me do my impressions and they said I have the gift. So they moved me from Impression Camp to Impression Academy. And the dean of Impression Academy, little guy, Rich. He came over and he said, well, he would always start going, well, I think that's how he gets into Reagan. He goes, well, you've got the gift. God, what else? You'll see me? Wait, no, yeah, you'll see me next week, Happy.